The widely popular podcast Serial is back for a second season, but the new season is already starting on shaky grounds. It tells the story of Bowe Bergdahl, the soldier who walked away from his post in Afghanistan and was held by the Taliban for 5 years. It's interesting, but comes with a journalistic twist.
I'm Sarah Koenig.
Serial's second season kicked off this week to much fanfare. After all, the popularity of season 1 guaranteed it would make a splash.
The producers of the podcast Serial say this is the first time U.S. soldier Bowe Bergdahl has told his side of the story.
And much of what Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl has to say is riveting, including his description of captivity.
Just standing in an empty, dark room hurts.
There's a natural assumption that Bergdahl is in fact talking to Serial host Sarah Koenig.
Listen to what he told the popular Serial podcast during an interview.
But he didn't tell his story to Serial. As Koenig reveals, the 25 hours of interviews she's using to tell Bergdahl's story were handed over by filmmaker Mark Boal.
You've probably heard of his movies, The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30.
Koenig goes on to explain that Bergdahl is not speaking to the press, but gave his permission to use the interviews.
He could be expressing the genuine beliefs of a whistleblower. Or the truth could be something else entirely. And I'm definitely going to get into that.
But if you are not speaking directly to the source, how will you ever find out? I have to say, I don't really understand this, because she packages his interviews very well and weaves together a thread, which she's very, very good at. But then she also brings this movie producer, writer into it, Mark Boal, B-O-A-L, and she interviews him as if he has some special insight only because he was the one who sat down to talk to Bowe. But he doesn't have any, he doesn't know what the truth is. She's not going to be able to find the truth, whether he walked away to alert authorities that his troops were in great danger, that's what he says he was doing, or whether he walked away because he was fed up. I mean, how's she going to get at that?
I don't know how she is going to get at it. And I got to say a couple things. First off, I found Mark Boal in that first episode to be almost unlistenable. He has the most grating frat boy bro style of interviewing Bowe Bergdahl. And maybe he got great stuff that way. I can't stand listening to him ask his questions.
No, Joe, we'll make a joke. If you want to make a joke, I'll be funny. Stupid.
We also got a note that according to the New York Times, Serial was looking at another story for season 2, but it sounds like maybe they didn't think they were going to have enough time, and this kind of fell in their lap. That, plus the fact that the first episode, I just think it's kind of a snoozer. Bowe Bergdahl it's a well-known story, maybe not in the depth they're trying to tell it here, but we've all heard about it, maybe moved on. I'm going to suggest, this is crazy, that Serial's success in that first season came from the fact that their story, that Adnan Syed story, was so inherently riveting. Not because Serial's a podcast, not because they did anything especially great production-wise. I think they found a great story, and I don't know that they can replicate it.
Yeah, you know, I was a huge fan of the first season. I've only heard half of the first episode, so it's too early to tell. A couple of things I would say about it is, first of all, I thought that last year, Sarah Koenig approached this with a very quirky, personal style. And I almost think that because this is such a well-known story, she seems to be trying to play it straighter than she did last year, and I don't know how well that's going to do. I'm going to listen. I want to see how this develops, but I'm concerned that Bowe Bergdahl's story, he may not hold up as somebody who's that interesting. He may just turn out to be somebody who comes across as kind of nuts, and therefore I don't know that that's going to hold it. If she had
ongoing conversations with him like she did with Adnan, maybe it would, but she's not going to get that.
Maybe it would, yeah.
Well, I wasn't drawn to the first series, and I'm new. And and at the point where I was about to get drawn, because everybody else was copycat, then I started reading all of the, I thought, correct criticism about some of the issues she did not address, which turned me completely off. So in this instance, I never heard it. I'm thinking to myself, for the reasons many people have mentioned, that this is a story people think they know. And the first one, at least, was a story you didn't know at all, and it was a closed case, so you could do a lot of movement in there in terms of storytelling that would make it more compelling in the way that we're accustomed to with This American Life.
Well, I was a big fan of the first one, and not just because it was a really good story, you're right, but also because it gave you a little insight into the journalistic process. I really liked the way you got that sense from Sarah Koenig as a personality, that she was trying to sort it out as she was going along. She was going through that process of discovery and self-doubt, and when you wonder when your source is telling you the truth and when you don't. And I think you're right, not having that direct access to Bergdahl is going to make that much harder with this story. There's still, you could tell from the first episode that she's trying to introduce that mystery and can we know, is it knowable? But you're right, the story itself just doesn't feel like it lends itself to that kind of introspection.
I'm not sure.
It seems to me that probably the story is about the people around him.
Yeah.
Even if
The
she
father
has
and-
the father, how about those other soldiers that came forward that now we've learned were sort of gotten together by this PR firm? What about them? What about the other people? That would seem to me to be more interesting.